And she represents the president of the university who couldn't join us today, Alia.
Thank you very much.
The floor is yours. Thank you.
Yes, and so I am here on behalf of the president, as Pascal has said, Daniel Mouchard, and of the whole presidential team, to celebrate your presence in our university. And you have the stars shining over you to celebrate and honor your presence. So welcome and bienvenue at Sorbonne Nouvelle, which was created in 1970, but you see that now we don't look like we've been created in the 70s. After the historic University of Paris was split up, we call our university the University of All Cultures. We specialize in humanities and social sciences with a focus on language and languages. We are also especially attentive to innovative teaching methods, reflexivity on our pedagogical practices, and have a number of specialists in didactics in at least 2 different research labs. It is thus a perfect setting to welcome a conference on English didactics. And we also have a very strong English department and 2 strong labs in English studies. At the Sorbonne Nouvelle, our exceptional openness to the world results from a synergy created by the drive to address 3 major objectives: to develop the welcoming tradition at our university, where nearly a third of our students are from abroad, more than half at doctoral level, to work with professors and researchers from all over the world, and to contribute to a globalized university system in which France assumes an extensive role that also includes the provision of assistance to refugee students and academics. Openness to the world also plays an important part in our pedagogical and scientific mission, which is strongly rooted in multilingualism and multiculturalism. It promotes internal diversity and drives change in our teaching perspectives. It has also enabled us to provide all of our students and staff with the opportunity to avail of mobility across the world, a network of 400 partner universities, and to lay the foundations for a future European campus. Finally, our strong international presence extensively contributes to an ambitious drive to gain recognition from the scientific and pedagogical value of teaching programs provided by our institution and the career development prospects, therefore. We also aim to optimize the appeal of our institution through the systematic provision of teaching in English and other languages and the development of an extended offer of online training. So that's for the promotion of the university. And you have discovered our new green, or you maybe not have discovered it yet, but you will discover our new green flowered state-of-the-art campus designed by the famous architect Christian de Port-en-Parc, and especially this beautiful amphitheater with those stars shining over your heads. I hope you will enjoy the other facilities, the inclusion of the university in the city, its openness to society through its library and through everything we offer for the people living around us, as you partake in its mission to promote knowledge. This conference, of course, is not just a meeting of minds, but a convergence of diverse perspectives, as I could see in the program, innovative methodologies, and groundbreaking research. It is a unique opportunity to delve into the depth of education theory and practice, to share your insights, and to forge collaborations that will shape the future of English didactics, I hope. The specific topic you are discussing throughout the conference is not only particularly important in the context of English didactics in a globalized world in which we are all trying to situate our role in our community of practice, and to which I am myself socialized as a linguist working in an English department, but it is also crucial in the context of Sorbonne Nouvelle University's integration in a European alliance in which one of the partners is Essex, with English as its native language, but all the others are other European countries who have adopted English as their lingua franca in order to facilitate mobilities, education, institutional harmony, and collective research. I am thus particularly interested in the conclusions of your work together at the end of this conference, and particularly crushed that I will only be able to attend very few presentations as I need to run around Paris and across the virtual worlds of video conferencing to an incredible, stimulating, but frustrating profusion of European and local engagements during this conference. Over the next 3 days, you will engage in thought-provoking discussions, attend enlightening presentations by keynote speakers, and all presenters cultivate interactions over food and drinks, as well as during the actual sessions. I'm a specialist in family dinners, so I'm very interested in what you say during feeding yourself. Knowing the organizers and knowing the values colleagues in English didactics share, I am convinced that you will follow the code of conduct we have adopted within UFI, our European Alliance, and will act kindly towards others, adopt a positive attitude, practice self-reflection, as you experience this extraordinary scientific event and process all the presentations you are attending. You will, of course, have full respect for the presenters and the audience, even if they indicate diverse perspectives, or more junior, come from a different theoretical background, a different community, a different culture, a different gender, and that you thoroughly enjoy diversity, so that whomever you interact with might be, you will want to learn from them. So on behalf of the university, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the keynote speakers, Jean-Paul Narcy-Combes, Richard Smith, who has not arrived yet. Oh, yes, you're here. Maria Luisa Perez Canado, Patrice Baldwin, where's Patrice? Yeah. Luke Plonsky, hey. We're extremely honored and privileged to welcome you in our university. And it's a great opportunity for all of you to listen to them. I would, of course, also like to thank the members of the Roundtable, Heather Hilton, Muriel Grosbois, Laurent Rouverol, Sabina Schaffner, Claire Tardieu, all presenters for their preparation and future performance, and all the delegates for attending to each other's presentations and providing, I hope you will, fruitful comments and questions. Session chairs, participants are all thanked. Your dedication and passion for English didactics is what make events like this possible and successful. And at last, I would like to thank the organizing committee, and especially Pascal Magnoloff, but of course Claire Tardieu, Marie-Claire Lemarchand, Virginie Privas-Bréauté, Justine Paris, I don't know if she is Justine, hello, Élise Ouvrard, Joséphine Raymond, Nicolas Moll, Daniel Schog, and Laurent Rouverol for their tireless efforts in putting together such a comprehensive and engaging program. We also have the scientific community to thank for anonymously reviewing the abstracts and ensuring that the conference be of utmost quality. Once again, welcome to Sorbonne Nouvelle University, to this International English Didactics Conference. I know you will make these days together memorable, productive, and transformative. Together you can advance the art and science of teaching and learning, and we really need it in the world we're living in right now, and in the country we're living in right now, especially the French people here. And in doing so, you can make a profound difference in the lives of learners and teachers around the world. Thank you.
Right, I'm not at all going to be as talkative as Alia. This is just a very short word. So I'm Isabelle Gadouin. I'm the head of what we call Research Lab here in France, Prisme. And of course, Cecilia, the group of linguists, is part of Prisme. And so in the name of Prisme, I want to really very warmly welcome you and thank you for being here today. So Prisme is just one of the many funding institutions for this big event. I'm not going to, I'm sure that Claire and Pascal and Laurent will give you a complete enumeration of the funding institutions. But in the name of my group, I want to welcome you to this big ARDAA conference on teaching and learning English as a foreign language in educational settings, issues and specificities. And so, first of all, I want to thank Claire Tardieu, Pascal Manoilov, and Laurent Rouverol, who worked extremely hard on putting this huge conference together. And I see that they forgot absolutely nothing, from the coffee breaks to the T-shirts stamped with the Sorbonne Nouvelle logo, and even the bright blue skies. And I must say, we haven't had much of that during the last 6 months of rain that we've had. I also want to thank someone who's not here, but I think it's important to think of her, and this is Paola Frassini, who's our secretary over there at the Maison de la Recherche, and of course, without her and all the other secretaries here at the site of Nation, without them, we wouldn't be able, of course, to organize such events. And I also want to extend my thanks to the students in charge of helping with the material side of the event: Arthur, Camille, Emma, Oana, and Pierre. My computer is doing all sorts of strange things here. But fortunately, you still have the right picture there. And finally, I want to thank the 155 participants to the event, the 80 speakers and 5 keynote speakers, including, so they've been mentioned already, Patrice Baldwin from the UK, Jean-Paul Narcy-Combes, who's Professor Emeritus of Sorbonne Nouvelle, Luc Plonsky, I understand he is over there, from Northern Arizona University, Maria Luisa Perez Cañado from Jaén in Spain, and you can see that the weather in Jaén is exactly the same as in Paris. And finally, Richard Smith from Warwick, and I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. And so, without taking any more of your time, I wish you all very, very fertile dialogues and fascinating discussions in the various workshops and sessions, plenary lectures, roundtables, not to forget, of course, some sightseeing in Paris.
Thank you very much, Alia and Isabelle. Right, Josephine just told me that I didn't even introduce myself, so I'm sorry. So I'm Pascal Manoilov. I'm president of the ARDAA Association, and I would like to welcome you all today to this very first international conference for ARDAA, which is called TeachLang. While the beautiful city of Paris is preparing to host the Olympic Games in just 4 weeks, we all know that this conference is the real main event. After all, what could be more thrilling than the exchange of groundbreaking ideas about teaching and learning English as a foreign language in educational settings? We are absolutely delighted to have you join us for the next 3 days for what promises to be an enriching and enlightening event. I would first like to thank the president of La Sorbonne Nouvelle, Mr. Daniel Mouchard, for hosting us in these brand new premises. Our guests, you, deserve to be welcomed to this place charged in history. Well, the history lies in the name now. We are honored to welcome participants from many countries, including Spain, Great Britain, Sweden, Finland, Tunisia, Canada, the United States, Taiwan, Costa Rica, and many others. Your presence here represents an ideal forum for the exchange of ideas, knowledge, and expertise that is essential for advancing the field of English language teaching and learning. This conference holds special significance as it marks the first international gathering organized by our learned society, ARDAA, to celebrate its 15th anniversary. ARDAA aims to promote and disseminate research in the field of second language acquisition and English language teaching. Our objective is to provide a central place for gathering researchers and practitioners in this field. Did you know that ARDAA was originally spelled with only one A at the end instead of today's double A? This changed over time as our goals widen, but it happens that ARDAA with one A is also the oldest dwelling place for elves and men in J.R.R. Tolkien's work. Who else but this great linguist, inventor of so many languages, could have coined such a name for our learned society? Well, I'm asking who else? But the answer is obvious, since the founder of ARDAA, Jean-Paul Narcy-Combes, is with us for this conference, and he will be our first keynote speaker today. Thank you, Jean-Paul, for initiating what has become the birthplace of so many great projects. ARDAA is a place where humans' ability to learn and use languages is investigated. And even if our researchers concentrate on English, we always keep in mind that languages are a bridge to communication and understanding, tolerance and peace, creativity and cultural exchange, fostering a more sustainable, interconnected world. I would also like to welcome our other distinguished keynote speakers who came from around the world. Okay, little test. Richard Smith and Patrice Baldwin from UK. Thank you very much, Virginie. You're the only one who listened. Maria Luisa Perez-Quiñado. Thank you. And Luc Plonsky from, thank you very much. The organization of this conference would not have been possible without the best steering committee ever. Your dedication and hard work have been instrumental in making this conference a reality. Heartfelt thanks to all of you, and special thanks to Claire Tardieu and Laurent Rouverol, our kind hosts here at La Sorbonne Nouvelle. Right, now, before we begin, some practical information. Here in La Sorbonne Nouvelle, you can use EduRoam to connect to the internet. If you don't have EduRoam, you can contact Laurent Rouverol here, who'll be able to provide you with an access code. All rooms are equipped with a computer for your presentations. We advise you to put your PowerPoint presentation on a USB stick. If you don't have one, there are spares in each room. For those of you coming to the conference dinner tomorrow, we invite you to take a stroll through the Luxembourg Gardens and around the Pantheon before the meal. We'll meet at 6:15 in the entrance hall. Finally, some publications are planned after the conference. In the next few days, you will receive a call for papers for the future volume of a French international journal, Recherche et pratique pédagogique en langue, which focuses on the notion of learner empowerment. Later this summer, we'll send you a call for papers specifically dedicated to teacher trainings. And now it is high time to begin. We look forward to the insightful discussions, presentations, and collaborations that will unfold over the next few days. Thank you for being here, and we hope you have a productive and enjoyable conference. And right on time, even with 4 minutes in advance. Yes, it's going to be, yeah. Okay. So Marie-Claire and Daniel are handing you out what Jean-Paul has printed for you. So Jean-Paul Narcy-Combes is emeritus professor here at La Sorbonne Nouvelle, and is also been head of the research lab of the Didactique, and is published a lot of works in didactics. So we'll listen to his insight. And of course, what did I forget? And again, is the founder of ARDAA. So thank you very much.
Quite a few people with me, let's face it. Among them, Claire. Après, je ne sais pas ce qu'il faut faire là. Attends.
Yeah. Oops.
Après, il faut que tu mettes...
And here we go.
Perfect.
Okay, and you move this one.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. I'm a little lost because this is not a Mac, and when I retired, I could afford a Mac. Not before, because the university wasn't rich enough in those days. I left ARDAA because I was in charge of a research laboratory in a department of French as a foreign language. I was not teaching French as a foreign language. I don't even know what it is. But what I really liked is that it provided us with a totally different approach to the world, a world where English did not really exist because French embassies in particular refused to accept that we used English, for instance, things like that. So it was a totally different approach, but very clearly it was a multilingual world. And it was a world where you realized that there was no one way of learning or teaching a language, and where people had totally different political attitudes to language learning. But first, I would like to thank the organizers to have remembered that there was an old man in Nantes who could say a few things concerning language learning, and they have offered me a wonderful opportunity to give what is going to be my last talk in my university, and I have loved being a professor in Sorbonne Nouvelle, about the teaching and learning of English, because it was my initial research interest in English has always been something very particular in my life for personal reasons, which I'm not going to mention, of course. And I was therefore very proud to open the first very big ARDAA conference, because it was also an opportunity to meet quite a few friends, which, being retired, I do not see as often. And I'm pleased to see how successful this association has become over time. My talk will illustrate my personal journey from the didactics of English to a broader transdisciplinary approach of language learning and teaching in the multilingual world, which is the title of a book we published with Multilingual Matters. I've gone through all the abstracts I actually have, and it was extremely interesting in order to organize this lecture, which has slightly altered my initial talk as a consequence. I think this is what I should be doing. Yep. On the handout, you have a select bibliography. It is mainly a tribute to the great PhD students in Morocco who have accepted to further our research. When we retired, of course, we still had, my wife and I, a few PhD students in France, but we couldn't have any new ones. But in Morocco and Nigeria, we had the opportunity to keep going. And it was very interesting because it was a totally different setting. And I must say, we learned more being interested in the teaching of languages in the Maghreb than we did in France. And we had more opportunities to innovate than we would have had in France, especially in secondary and primary education. The great number of research references, which of course would justify what I'm going to say, will be found in the two books which are in the bibliography, and would be too many things on the screen. It would have been difficult. It would be too difficult to mention all the names, and most of what I'm going to say, of course, comes from all these references. Some very important names, the ones that really were so important that I just couldn't forget them, will be mentioned in the slides. Now, I never understood why I became interested in epistemology at the beginning, because I didn't like philosophy when I was at school. I have changed. What is very important to remember when epistemology is concerned, that Kuhn said that adhesion to a theoretical paradigm is of the same nature as religious conversion. Those who know me know that I'm always afraid of fundamentalism and rigidity. I personally would tend to think that in the human sciences, it might be slightly different in other domains, but in the human sciences, paradigms could be seen as complementary rather than contradictory. Obviously, Einstein and Newton are complementary historically speaking, but what they provide is totally different and exclusive. But for me, it's not the case in the human sciences. I do believe in epistemic for some, or epistemological responsibility for others. Humans are responsible for the construction and the validity of their knowledge. And I wish this was remembered today. This is sometimes overlooked in the day of the social media, and I have heard that some young people will vote for a person because that person is on TikTok. Well, I don't know whether that is the best source of knowledge in the world. The constructs we use need to be questioned all the time. Do they actually correspond to something concrete? For instance, motivation is the complex interplay of different processes. It's very difficult to think that it is one thing. A grammar is not how a discourse is received and produced. Grammar is how some individuals have described discourse isolated from its context of production. It doesn't mean that if you know grammar, you're going to receive and produce discourse. It doesn't mean also that you need not think of grammar, but in different ways. We'll come back to culture when we comment another slide, but there again, people should beware. Sorry, I'm a little lost. This should go down, but you don't see the... In this talk, intervention, that is, setting up learning environments and helping learners to develop their language learning, will be my focus. It generally requires to turn to even more scientific domains than description or analysis. Present-day theories have come to very different descriptions of the phenomena we're interested in because of the quick pace of the changes. We should beware of references that are older than 10 years, and we should make sure that these references are still valid. Now, transdisciplinarity is a position we have slowly adopted because research objects cannot be isolated. So research focuses on the interactions of objects in complex systems. This should not be forgotten. There will always be a sociological, a psychological, a cognitive element in language learning, whether we think of it or not. And pluri-, inter-, or transdisciplinarity is often put forward. And integrated language didactics, which is one of the topics of one of the papers, is an instance of transdisciplinarity, even if it's limited. And I suppose that the colleagues interested in the didactic approach in ESP and ASP will also have a more transdisciplinary approach. For instance, at the CRELA symposium in Nancy in 2013, 32 disciplines were concerned, and this was applied linguistics. More are to be found in our 2019 Multilingual Matters book. The number of disciplines is so great that we haven't even been able to count it because we can't count that far. What is interesting with transdisciplinarity is that it seeks to solve problems in a participatory way, making sense in social terms. It's more interested in the emic aspect of things than the etic aspects. And it also suppresses the borrowing of concepts and methods from other fields without being sure of how to use them. Knowledge, in fact, is certainly more than the sum of disciplinary knowledge. But what for me is also important in terms of epistemology, that researchers have a political role to play. I have taken part in the CLES research, which is certification and evaluation in universities. And we all remember the difficulty we had with the political world, who had a totally different approach to what we would have been doing, and they have certainly prevented CLES from developing as easily as it could have. But we also know, and one of the papers will talk about it, that official ministerial instructions in schools can be very different to what research results would suggest. And however, this, of course, partly justifies the need that some feel for didactics to be a discipline in its own right, except that we should not forget that a discipline is always a question of political power somewhere, and ARDAA certainly was founded because the didactics of English, politically speaking, in French universities was not recognized. So it was a political as well as a scientific move, which is always a little embarrassing, but I'm glad we did it. Now, concerning these positions, which you can see on the slides, it's clear that institutional learning environments do not always make it possible to provide learners with sufficient practice and participation, and the teachers are not necessarily responsible for that situation. The change of words, teaching to mediating, learning to practicing, is not purely political. It is a reminder that the teacher has a very different role than what was asserted before. Institutional learning environments do not provide enough resources and tools, and the teacher often remains the source of input and a model, which is not what they should be. A teacher should not be a model, and he should not be the input. And yet, in most countries in the world, it is what they have to do. The individual, now, the description of the cognitive unconscious highlights the importance of practice that allows non-threatening metacognitive reflection and recast of the productions, and it's made possible in collaborative work and is more difficult in collective activities. And I think this is extremely important because most classrooms in the world only provide collective activities that do not lead to the objectives they are supposed to reach. A reconsideration of cultural phenomena is imperative, and the political situation in this country shows how imperative it is. And there is a contradiction between what research results confirm and the general position. That is, culturally, there is blending rather than essentialism. And just look at the papers in this country, you will see that French culture is not a uniform culture. It is a mixture of often conflicting cultural environments, and this we should remember. Transculturing is more the rule, therefore, than behaving according to the expectations of one given cultural environment. I'm not even sure that uniforms are going to make very big changes in the social and political attitudes of learners. The notion of national identity is questioned, but not necessarily by the general public. Apparently, the general public believes in national identity as one rigid thing. And if intercultural studies provide useful information, we must remember that cultural phenomena are blurred and not clear-cut. And beware, we should also beware of dogmatic definitive positions. In Marseille, there is what they call transcultural clinical research, and it shows us how damaging some cultural beliefs and attitudes can be. And unfortunately, people don't often mention that transcultural clinic research. Now, as a consequence, we need to remember what this slide shows. None of this is easy. General English is a debatable construct if we believe in discourse, but it's not easy to avoid using it. Sometimes I can hear myself speaking of General English, which is something I don't believe in, but what can you say? Clearly, English medium instruction are content-based. Some people said that it is more neutral, but it doesn't escape local cultural influences. And this would apply, obviously, to clearly in French. Development of culture and discourse will be facilitated by cross-cultural encounters and metacognitions, as some papers show. But that's not easy to implement. Genres and cultural environments mean that we should take learners' perspectives into account to avoid misapprehension. And that's not always done. Often we are told British culture is, etc. But we don't know how they feel about Britain, for instance. Global English is interesting, but what is it? And variation is important. And I was pleased to see that there would be papers on the non-traditional variants of English. As far as pronunciation training is concerned, I can see that there still is an important debate on should we favor intelligibility or perfection. What is perfection? I remember when I was in a teacher training college, EUFM, when I first became a professor, where we were teaching Queen's English, which has now become King's English, but the kids had nothing to do, socially speaking, with the world of Queen's English. So it was a bit funny to tell these people, can you speak la-di-da, when obviously that's not what they would have done in the equivalent French. Now, you have slide 9, this slide, which you obviously can't read, on the handout, and I'm going to let you read it peacefully whenever you like. For me, in fact, it is the conclusion of my research. My research gradually has helped me to find my meaning in my life, which is we all have to find the meaning of our life, and to understand how we behave and how we relate to others. The very complexity of what you will read shows how difficult it is to set up adequate learning environments that would really work according to the way human beings behave, live, act, feel, etc. And yet, if we don't do it, the kids won't be happy. And I can tell you that in many classrooms in the world, and France is not the worst country as far as this is concerned, the kids are in classrooms where what happens has nothing to do with what they would like to happen. This is a quick reminder of what we have seen so far. And clearly, traditional classrooms are not often equipped to provide what is required. And teachers need new training conditions, as we will soon see. I think that what I would stress, because I could see that some papers were interested in that, is that the need for collaboration and reconsideration of the potential of instructional grammar FFI, and tools is extremely important. I do see a point in using them, but I have discovered that through research and through what I have read, that when learners participate in collaborative work, they, in fact, gradually practice the grammar they are learning. And sometimes their grammar explanations are more useful, even if they're wrong. This means that we have to further our understanding of these phenomena. Now, there again, as far as affect is concerned, a lot of work and research will be necessary to achieve optimal goals. And again, I'm not sure that uniforms are going to solve the problems of secondary schools in France. I think more thought should be given to the problems. Emotions and anxiety are very important, and engagement and motivation. Now, the construct of engagement is very important. That is, highly motivated people may lose their motivation if they don't do anything. I have spent 7 years in secondary education as a student, and I was bored because I'm hyperactive. And I was not the only one to be bored. I did learn, not because the lycée was good in my days, but simply because I came from the right type of family. So I was successful, and this has not changed. In many colleges in this country, the kids are bored, in spite of what the teachers try to do, because the teachers don't work in very good conditions. And because they're bored, they don't learn. And whatever you do is they should be able to engage. And the teachers need the right training to realize how to achieve this. And some of the research described in the colloquium deal with questions related to affect. Now, teachers need a lot of mentored practice to actually be able to adapt their practice and apply what they would like to apply. There was a very interesting research in Central Africa, in fact, funded by the French Institut Français. And it revealed that initially teachers changed their discourse. That is, in the first survey, the teachers actually said what was expected from them. We will do this, this, and this, and that. And then Comelin went to different places and videotaped the teachers, and they were all doing the reverse of what they wanted to do. So self-confrontation and new mentored practice changed that. And it really meant that the best training courses are not very successful if there's no mentored practice or no collaborative practice. And this is extremely important. And teacher education in some countries is not really taken very seriously because it is expensive on top of that. And quite a few of the presentations in this colloquium actually deal with new conceptions of learning environments. I also would be very interested in seeing how learning environments are going to deal with artificial intelligence. Unfortunately, my PhD students defended their PhDs before they had time to reach artificial intelligence. But it is definitely going to impact language learning. The slide is explicit, but I would like to stress that blended environments are the most effective types of environments, and as proven by different research. So far, teachers find it difficult to implement blended environments. I really think that flipped classrooms can be a solution, but quite a few flipped classrooms, in fact, are transmissive. And this is a problem because if it is transmissive, it does not help learners to construct their knowledge, but other flipped classrooms are not transmissive, and some very few MOOCs, but some MOOCs are constructive, and I think that that is an interesting solution. As a conclusion, I would like to go back to the free won't construct, which you will find in slide 9 if you are not too tired to go through it. The free won't construct is the capacity to veto or suppress your impulses or your conditioned intentions, and it does not result from direct control of behavior. When we behave, we are not conscious of what we do. It escapes our consciousness, and we become conscious of what is going to happen either when it is happening or after it has happened. And free won't is that capacity to veto what you're going to do or what you have done, and to accept that maybe you should reconsider and try and do something else. And again, what you try and do is going to escape your conscious will. And research results, as far as we are concerned, in the human sciences and cognition, one first, above all, they confirm the intuitions of researchers who, like Brunet, Dewey, Freinet, put the emphasis on action, learning by doing. And therefore, the learners should all be doing something as much as possible. And digital technology is changing the game by facilitating this action. More can be done by single learners because we have the tools. Tools are available. And they are going to suppress, some people want to suppress phones in schools. Yes, but in Africa, for instance, the mobile phone is a way of learning because that's all they have. Because some schools do not have electrical input, but all the kids have their telephones. So you see, you cannot have just one single solution for everybody. If people need their phones for learning, why can't they have them? Obviously, if they use their phone to telephone their boy or girlfriends, that's another thing. Well, it depends. I mean, it's also very pleasant, but let's face it. And the results of research, they sometimes contradict, as we saw, the traditional dominant positions in social and pedagogical practices. One of my PhD students in Morocco was very brave because they suddenly were told by the king and his minister to start teaching disciplines in French in schools. So she had to teach biology in French to kids, 9-year-olds, who could hardly speak French. And she actually set up a course where the kids created their own course in French starting from Arabic. That is, and using the dialect in between, the Darija in between. That is things that were strictly forbidden by, I don't know what, but it was forbidden to use Arabic and the Darija in French. But it was so successful that the ministry then was interested in what she was doing. Unfortunately, COVID came, and I don't know what happened afterwards. So the spread of scientific and technological development is making the research process more complex, particularly in view of the number of fields involved. Very clearly, our research laboratories may be a little limited in their, let's say, disciplinary scope, but it's not easy to do that. But it also provides many more tools and facilities. It's easier to do research now than it was when I started some 50 years, 10 years ago. Language teachers, I don't believe we are language teachers. I believe we are at most teachers of discourse, but language teachers and researchers as go-betweens have a crucial role to play in the troubled and complex situation of the world today. And I can tell you that this is what the working with people dealing with French as a foreign language has shown me. We do create bridges between people with different viewpoints. I remember every year some PhD students from Morocco and Nigeria would come and spend 2 weeks in Nantes, and we met them. It was unbelievable what they knew about France. They knew everything about French literature, but not about French people. And we had very strange situations where we had a party at night. My son and his partner were there with their 2 children, and they say, of course they're married. Well, of course they're not. Do you mind? And then we just have to say, well, it's not our problem. MYOB, they mind their own business and we mind ours. But this they just couldn't understand. It took a certain amount of time for these teachers of French to understand that the way we live, the way we feel things is very different. Well, now they're going to have to readapt to new things, probably. So we do have a crucial role to play. And, well, I'm not going to play it. You are, so good luck and bon courage. Comment on fait? Voilà. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Hello, hello. Good, thanks. So we have time for a few questions, if you have any. Like 2 minutes. We have time, but... Marie-Hélène, go ahead.
I did ask her to
Thank you very much, Jean-Paul, for kind of bridging all this time span between when you created ARDAA and now, and giving us so many insights on what's happening, what could happen in the future. I was really struck by your conclusion when you said we do create bridges for people with different viewpoints. Would you tell us a few more words about that?
Well, I don't know whether we create them, but we certainly mediate that creation of bridges. Sometimes we're not aware of it. Sometimes we take things for granted as teachers. And I think this is what we shouldn't be doing. But very clearly, and that was my experience when I was dealing with people interested in French, is that for them to understand what we were doing, how we lived, and to accept us, we had to find ways of letting them show that what we're doing is not necessarily bad. And so we are bridging something there. I do remember one of my PhD students was in secondary education, and he wanted his students to understand people their age in France. So I said, why don't you show them a series for teenagers? And he said, that won't be possible. And it wasn't. They managed to show episodes of La Vie est Belle. I think that exists. And even that was problematic. Because in La Vie est Belle, well, people are not always fully dressed according to the rules of Moroccan society. And on top of that, his students were in remote villages, so it wasn't Casablanca or Marrakesh. And they were appalled. The kids were appalled. And they mentioned God, and they mentioned their parents, and et cetera, et cetera. But then, strangely enough, they had to produce their own series and videotape them. And then you discovered that something had happened, that what they had, not like in the French series, they partly adapted to Moroccan settings. For instance, Moroccan kids do have boyfriends and girlfriends. But the parents weren't there. Because then we realized how heavy in these countries the influence of parents and religion is. And, there was a slight change. And it didn't do anything. So you see, it's important because for them, I mean, I do remember, for instance, in a survey, some kids actually said that French was the language of the devil. I hope you realize that some of you speak the language of the devil. But then, when the kids were asked, often it was because their grandparents had a pretty bad memory of the Revolutionary War in Algeria. And it was still there. Well, I think it's partly important if we can show them that we're not all devils. It's going to be a bit difficult maybe in a few months, but so far we're not. This is what I mean. But it's a very tricky job. And some teachers are not trained to do it, especially in other countries. But even in our country, some people do believe there is they speak of civilisation britannique, and I don't know what that is, especially when I look at their election campaign as well. But there is certainly a British history, which is different. I don't know whether I have replied to your question, but I have tried at least.
Right, maybe another question? Very quick one. No, thank you. Well, I believe it is time to thank Professor Narcy-Combes for his conference.